part of what's been interesting about the time that we're in is how to share this with a congregation. It's not that easy, because many of us know that many of the people who are sitting in our pews, they really didn't come to this church because they're United Methodists. They came to this church because they had a friend, or they heard the pastor had a good sermon series, or they attended a chicken supper, and they had a great time, and they met people, and they said, I want to go to that church. And now all of a sudden they're hearing about a denomination and a general conference, and what does all this mean? So at Floris United Methodist Church, I found it a great opportunity to introduce people to the fact that we're a part of a worldwide denomination. And there are 13 million of us who are called United Methodists across the globe. And it's a remarkable opportunity to explain to those who are interested that there is this thing called General Conference, and it looks a lot like the United Nations or the Congress. It's actually more like the United Nations than Congress. But I think to tell them that they're in a global church, to tell them that we're connected to United Methodist in many settings, for some of our folks who came and didn't have a United Methodist background, they're sort of unusually excited about that. Now, there are also a lot of people who still don't care, and that's fine. That's fine. So one of the things that I've discovered is it's in helping people understand the issues that are called General Conference, I try to give different levels of information for different people, because it's sort of like a funnel. At the top of the funnel is the entire congregation. So I have a weekly e-note. It's an electronic one page that goes out to everybody by email. And so in that, I've given them updates about the commission on the way forward. Now, I've done that because I've been a member of the commission. A lot of my time's being spent. But I can imagine a pastor who just wants to inform them, say, you may have heard about the commission on the way forward and this called General Conference and LGBTQ inclusion and so on. And so what I do is in that, I just say, and there are 3 plans that are coming to General Conference. If you want to know more, click here. And then it goes to the entire document. Now, the number of people who want to read the entire document, it's about a 90-plus page document. They're down here at the bottom of that funnel. Now, then we might think of what could we do in between those stages, between general information and I want to read the whole plan. Well, there are a lot of video resources now, lots of video resources. So people like me have done presentations at annual conferences, and all that's archived. Probably in their own annual conference, something has been done. Or you can just start looking around at what others have done. So I can imagine a pastor having, using the communication, the bulletin. On Wednesday night, anybody who wants to come talk about this, we will hold a presentation and watch a video together. Now, after you watch the video together, the pastor might have done some extra work. And the pastor might start that event by saying, you are in a big denomination, and here's what it looks like. And if you go, thankfully, on the United Methodist website, there's information you can download about what a jurisdiction is, what a general conference is. And so I've downloaded those materials because I don't want to recreate them all. And when I do one of these, I always start by saying, we're a local church, and we're connected to a district, and that district's connected to a conference and a jurisdiction. And I just give them those, what for many clergy is just very basic information. But lay leaders, they really appreciate understanding the context that they're in. It's also how I introduce them to the fact that we pay apportionments. And a lot of people are in a culture of complaint around apportionments. But this gives us an opportunity to say, you may not be aware of all the good that you're doing around the globe, and we do that through apportionments, and I get to tell a few stories about that. But then eventually, having created all of that context, now we watch the video on the commission on the way forward, and we say, LGBTQ inclusion is a really important issue in our denomination, but because we're in an international denomination, different United Methodists think differently about it. Well, undoubtedly, if I have 100 people come to that event, and I serve a larger church, so sometimes we'll have 100 plus people, 150, 200 people that'll show up. When I talk about all the different points of view, people in the room will feel like, oh, well, I really am a part of this. Like, my point of view is being represented, my point of view. Now, it's really important for me to be fair about that, right? And not just to say my view is the view, but to say, here's the conversation. But then something I try to do at the end of that is to say LGBTQ inclusion is a really important issue. And you may be wondering, Why are we focused on that for a called General Conference? Well, it's because it is so important, and because, frankly, over the past few General Conferences, the tension around this one issue has gotten so high that we realize we just have to resolve it. But one of the reasons we want to resolve this issue is there are so many other issues we need to get to. So, you know, I've got members of my church that are African American or Korean American, or they're Americans that come from Latin America. They want us to talk about racism. They'd like us to really, and you know what? We do that at the church I serve, and we have those conversations too. But they would like the general church to really talk about that in a more detailed fashion. We've got some folks that would like us to deal with poverty issues. You know, as we find that in America, less federal money is dedicated to social services, that creates gaps, whether it's gaps in mental health or gaps in poverty, delivery systems of relief. They want to talk about that. So, you know, part of what I want to say is that some United Methodist churches really don't talk about any of those issues. And maybe the problem is not that the United Methodist Church as a denomination is focused on LGBTQ issues, and why do we have to talk about that? Maybe we just haven't exercised the muscles very often to talk about important issues, and now we have a chance. So the image I use a lot is, now you're in the gym, right? So understand something about your congregation. When you go into the gym and you put them on a set of equipment where they're having to talk about LGBTQ inclusion, they will often wake up the next morning sore. So you may not want to do that same conversation the next day. You may want to say, now let's talk about, you know, disciple Bible study, or let's talk about the good we're doing in our community at the shelter for homeless people, or whatever it might be. So this can't be everything we talk about. But we don't want to be in a church where we can't talk about important issues. So think about the funnel. Start with the general information. Some people just want a little bit. Some people want deeper, and that probably should be done with the pastor and the lay leaders, church council chair, whoever it is, in the room. And then keep drilling down. But here's one thing I do want to say. Many people want details of the report. So I'll do a Q&A with people in an annual conference, and they'll say, hey, Tom, can you give me the timeline of the one church plan, or the timeline? And I'll say, no, I won't do that. And the reason is, the report's only 90 plus pages long. You owe it to yourself to go and read the report. And you're really smart. You know, you're really bright. You've got that ability. You read books that are longer than that all the time. So I've said over and over again, it's all in the report, and there's full disclosure in the report. There's a tremendous amount of transparency in that report. So go and read the report, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your church. And that way you won't have bad information, or you won't misinterpret what I say. You'll have it right in front of you. And I want people to have the best information they can have.